and welcome to the show with me, Gillian Gotzel. Today, my guest is Matt Delahaye, who is the CEO and co-founder of inploi. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hi, Gillian. Great to be here.
I like to understand my guests outside the actual work that they do and the companies that they found. And you have a very interesting and diverse number of accolades in your LinkedIn. I was going through it. So tell me just about you. You have a really big, strong desire for leveling the playing field. Am I right? You want to make things more equal for more people. Is that a driving ambition of yours?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I'm from South Africa, which is a very complicated place, very beautiful place, but one of the most unequal societies on the planet. And I think growing up there and being exposed to a lot of that has definitely instilled in me a strong sense of social justice. So, I think that is kind of core to my beliefs and the things that I'm trying to achieve in life. Because I think there's a moral imperative for that, but also I think if we are to survive as a society, and if we are to pursue capitalism as we have, that it needs to adapt, and we need to use it as a tool to level the playing field and create opportunity, and diminish inequality rather than accelerate it. And that's that feeds through to what
You're
we've
also
done
part.
with employees
Yeah,
as
no,
well.
it's cool. Sorry, so you're also part of the Council of Inclusive Capitalism, and I read down, and I think that's what you're talking about there. So it's kind of good capitalism, if you like.
Yeah, it's a really interesting organization, quite new, but I think speaks to some of these things. Capitalism as an economic system has driven extraordinary economic growth and innovation and progress, but it has done so at the expense of the environment, at resulting in massive inequality within societies. And if we carry on as we are, it's going to buckle under its own weight. So how can we leverage and harness that productive capacity, that drive for innovation, and use that and turn it towards addressing some of the problems that we face, and towards kind of building more equal, more productive, happier, healthier societies, rather than a race to the bottom, where some people get very, very rich, a lot of people have nothing, and we live on a burning planet.
Good point. And I love when you say that capitalism is very powerful, but you want to make it powerful for the many and not for the few. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be.
There's no reason why it shouldn't be, and there's no reason why those two things are mutually exclusive. If we can just very, very happily live in a society where, if you want to make a lot of money, you can make a lot of money, but that needs to be utilized and fed back into the system, which has produced the capacity for you to generate that wealth in the first place. The roads you drive on when you get to your office were paid for by the state. The people who work in your factories were educated through a public system. The hospitals they go to when they're ill. So it's just about playing fair, really, I think, and realizing that we exist in a codependent system, and everybody has a role to play in that. So I guess taking a more of a stakeholder approach to building systems that work for the people who are participating in them, and all of the people.
Another string to your bow, you're a poet, and you are involved with Ozymandias, which is supporting writers and poets. How much of your time is devoted to poetry these days, I should say, maybe?
I'm a poet. That's very kind of you. Not as much as I'd like, but I'm perpetually penning things on my iPhone notes or in a journal. Ozymandias was actually a lockdown project. It's something I've been meaning to do for ages, but just haven't had the time to do. Kind of a little bit inspired a little bit by the journal Granter, which is obviously of a much higher level, but to provide a forum for people to share and publish creative writing of any sense. The idea that people have stories that are written in their minds or never really see the light of day, and a lot of creative people go to university and train to become a lawyer or an accountant, and go off in a career and kind of never are able to indulge that side of themselves. I thought it would be wonderful to create a space where, without any kind of serious editing or selection process, if you're taking the time to write something, we'll publish it. So I kind of set Ozymandias up for that reason, also slightly as a little bit of cover to publish some of my own writing.
Well, that's a great idea, because creativity, as we know, it's important for human beings to be creative. That's the baseline. And if you're an artist, it's important to get it out. But it's important for society to have, for people to be creative, because that's one of the things we need to teach people. It's not just your facts and figures, it's creativity, problem solving, and something else. I can't remember what it is. There's a third element there that's required, but no, really cool. So then tell me, let's go back now to your career rather than your other attributes. Yeah. So tech, your software as a service, how did that manifest itself? Did you study it in college, or did you become interested, post-college?
Yeah, so I studied accounting and finance in South Africa as an undergraduate, because they're at Stellenbosch University, because you're studying kind of what you're going to become. It's very vocational, and I sort of wanted to go into business, so that's what you did. I found it really, really boring and quite intellectually not massively stimulating. I think possibly because I was doing it in a second language. So it was just a lot of rote learning of things. So I was very fortunate to win a scholarship to Oxford University, where I did a Master's of Science in African Studies, which was fantastic. And then, ironically, coming from South Africa to the UK to study Africa, did research on kind of small-scale agriculture in ex-homeland South Africa, kind of these very rural areas, to understand why people, in a context where there were huge debates about access to land and ownership, where in areas where people had always had access to land, why were they no longer using it? I went and lived in a village out there for a couple of weeks and did lots of interviews and kind of got under the skin of it, which was about changing incentives and kind of the modern world pushing into these areas that hadn't changed for a very long time. And the amount, fundamentally was about access to labor, that kids were going to school so they didn't work the fields, that the patriarchy was being eroded so that men couldn't control their wives as much. The state was providing kind of, welfare payments for pensioners and single mothers. So the need to rely on the land was changing. Anyway, side story. So I did that, was having a wonderful time, applied for a further year and kind of bridged onto the MBA program at the side business school. And whilst two things happened there that led to me finding inploi with Alex Hansen-Smith, my co-founder. First was trying to find a job in the summer between those two degrees. I was staying at my sister's on the floor. I didn't have any money. I'd seen a sign in the window looking for a waiting job. Went there and they didn't have anything. Well, the job had been filled. And I was like, well, I'm marginally competent. There must be lots of people around the city. I'll just find one. And spent 2 weeks applying online, appalled by the experience at a time when with these incredible platforms coming to the fore, Airbnb, Uber, Deliveroo, why was it so hard to find a job? Parked that experience, carried on to the MBA, and we had to do an entrepreneurship project. Started looking at the project we ran with some of the team there was kind of around labor markets and labor marketplaces specifically. So that was the initial seed. And then post MBA, Alex Hansen-Smith is a friend. Well, I was friends with this brother, and I was staying on their sofa in Clapham, and we got talking about
this. Is a common thread, sleeping on a couch surfing with your friends or your sister?
Pretty much, yeah. No money, weak currency, foreign country, leads to sofa where you can find it. But yeah, we got talking. He'd had shared experiences as well. I worked briefly for a sort of private equity fund investing in agriculture in Africa, but this had been kind of ruminating on the side. Alex and I kept kind of working on it, and eventually we got to the point where we thought, look, there is a really big opportunity here in a space where nobody's really doing anything substantial. If we don't give it a shot and somebody does, we'll look back and say that could have been us. So we eventually quit our jobs, and dived into building inploi. And this was 2016. And there's, what the business we started then is very different to where we are now, which I guess we'll talk about.
Yeah, so tell me about, so it's you term it Spotify for the hiring process. So it is disruptive or harmonizing, as you said before we started recording. So what is different about your software? And you're a technology company, not a recruitment company. You're a global tech company. So what is different about your software and what are you doing? How are you inverting and harmonizing, revolutionizing the recruitment process?
So I think Shopify for hiring is kind of a better analogy. And why? Because that is the front end. So we started out building a marketplace business, kind of like something like LinkedIn, realizing that the user experience of applying for a job and for companies flip that around, finding staff was leading to all sorts of problems and fundamentally to them not being able to find people they needed to hire. Fast forward to where we are now, kind of moving through COVID, we kind of adapted the model coming out of that towards a SaaS product, software as a service. And we address specifically the front end of the hiring journey. So you can think of it as the candidate experience. Why? Well, you only had to open a newspaper in the last 24 months coming out of the pandemic, during which time we realized that these low-skilled workers were actually essential workers, and then companies up and down the land couldn't find enough of them to operate effectively. Part of the reason for that was the technology that they were using to try and find them, and their approaches to marketing or distributing their jobs and reaching these people, because the way people interact online has changed fundamentally. The nature of the workforce has changed. And they were relying on the approaches and the tools of the past to try and address a problem of the present and the future. Turns out, by luck and by, I guess, grit staying alive, we had spent the last 3 and a bit years figuring out exactly how to solve these problems in the context of the marketplace that we were building. So in step with a handful of the bigger customers, what kind of prospects and customers that we were working with at the time, adapted our model away from a marketplace and towards a SaaS solution, cutting off one side of that, of what we had built, plugging it into the existing tech that these big enterprises had in place, but which was part of the problem, to completely revolutionize the entire front end of the journey, from how do they distribute jobs to various platforms, how do they advertise, are they running campaigns on social media, are they utilizing Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, but doing so completely objectively, so that you're looking at actual performance data to understand where there are people and where to distribute jobs and budgets to attract them. So one platform may be very good for. Sorry.
In terms of the people, the applicants, so you're saying low skilled or new collar workforce. So these are young people, millennials and Gen Zs, as opposed to C-suite candidates.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're, not to be too boring, but we're building infrastructure. So, it can be for anybody. The brands, the companies we work with, the Compass Group, for example, if you apply for a job for them, with them at any level, you will move through the software that we've built. It turns out that where we're focusing at the moment, because of those market conditions and because of where we've come from, is kind of big employers with large workforces who have relatively high levels of labor turnover. So there is kind of a bias towards chefs and waiters and cleaners and drivers and care workers and these kind of things, but it spans the entire kind of workforce. And
how do you make it easier to find those people? What are the unique features and benefits that you have?
So kind of looking at the top of the funnel, we have kind of 3 products, I guess, or elements to what we do. The first is Attract, which is that getting the jobs out to new audiences of candidates, opening up new platforms for them, shifting away from kind of traditional buy a job ad towards purely paying for performance, and then running either kind of campaigns for active candidates, so people who are actively looking for a job across any of the job platforms. Also opening them up to audiences, passive candidates, so people who are on Facebook or are on Instagram or on TikTok with either brand or role-led campaigns. But that's only part of the issue. Assuming we've done all of that and we've built you a very, very smart talent attraction engine that is completely automated and driven by kind of rules-based and AI-driven bidding to maximize the return on the investments you're putting into these platforms, you're then typically pushing these people, think of it from the experience of a job seeker. You've clicked on an ad on your phone. You're now on the careers pages of this company, super clunky. They're typically like the front end and bolt on of the existing back end systems that they have. Very difficult to navigate, very hard to move between jobs. Every time I click on something, it opens up in a new tab. You're expecting me to upload a CV, which I haven't got on my phone, by the way. And 85% of traffic is coming from a phone. We've developed kind of middleware that slots in there, replaces the front end of the hiring tech stack, kind of a new shop front for a brand, new careers pages, new job search, very intuitive application processes, kind of like a conversational UI or a chatbot. So you apply through an interactive conversation with the user agent. And then that data is piped into a company's existing HR systems, these things called applicant tracking systems, which are the sort of nerve center of their hiring, but built for a hiring manager's experience rather than for the experience of somebody looking for a job.
Can I go back to one of your points that you made? You said that most people, 80% of people apply or certainly look at jobs on their phone. I often ask them to load up a CV, which people don't have on their phone. How do you get around that problem in real terms?
So it depends on, well, that's a good question. It depends on the role. One of our clients, we helped them to hire 9,000 cleaners in the summer of 2021. Why are you asking for a CV? Well, that's because we've always done it. Okay, do you need a CV if somebody's going to come and clean a hotel room? Well, no, not really. Okay, what if we remove the requirement for a CV? Yeah, that's a good idea. Huge increase in the conversion rate. I think one thing that we do, the kind of final piece of that is called analyze, which ties all of this together, and is data and visibility around data and analytics around this whole process, giving a client full objective view of what is working and the movement of somebody looking for a job from first contact on whatever platform we reach them on, all the way through the application process and then into their systems and onwards to did they get hired. So suddenly it's remarkable how little kind of hiring managers into very, very big companies understand about this. Suddenly if you can shine a light on it and say, 50% of your applications are not finishing here because they get to the upload a CV question. Let's run an experiment and take it out. So that
rethinking things that have always been done that way, like why? It makes great sense. So tell me, you recently raised some money. Tell me about that. That's exciting. No more couch surfing, one presumes.
Well, we'll always be. We've never had a huge amount of money as a company. We've never raised like crazy amounts of venture capital or anything. So we, as a result, are pretty lean and capitally efficient. So still relying on the surface where we need them. But we just raised around. So I mentioned we've kind of pivoted. We had pivoted our approach coming out of COVID. With Touchwood and Whistle, kind of great success so far. So we raised a bit of money to kind of consolidate the work we've done there and to accelerate our growth from a mixture of existing investors and a handful of new ones. We raised 1.35 million to build out a growth team, build out kind of a professional sales function, to invest in marketing, and to continue on kind of the product development track that we're on.
Exciting. And when you say growth, the sales team, so you're currently most of your clients are in the UK, am I right?
Most of our clients are in the UK, or at least UK headquartered. We're kind of starting to expand with a handful of bigger enterprises. So the Compass Group UK and Ireland is a huge one of our big customers. We're obviously in Ireland with them, and then we're about to roll out kind of what we do with a company called the AS Watson Group, who are Hong Kong headquartered, and will be running into the Netherlands, Italy, Switzerland, and Hong Kong with them, and UK with their Superdrug, Savers, and the perfume shop brands. So that we're very excited about our first big retail customer and a kind of really intentional move into international markets.
So how much more development do you have to do? Is the software in place, or are you tweaking or building?
I think we'll always be building. We're a technology company using tech to fix real world problems, and those are obviously a moving target. We are in a place now where we are supporting a handful of very big blue chip customers with what we have, but there are always room for improvement, and we're always hearing new things that they're struggling with that fit into our product roadmap. So we're on a march to kind of be the platform that powers the hiring journey for everyone globally. Kind of end game is, if you apply for a job online at a company of any size anywhere in the world, you will move through some technology that we've built. So what we have now is really market leading in terms of the attraction, the conversion, and the analytics piece that I mentioned. But there are more and more things to build on there. AI is becoming very, very interesting, and there are places where that works. It is absolutely applicable to what we're doing. So I think the product development journey is never going to be over.
Okay, so one point I just wanted to raise, I think is really interesting, neurodivergent hires, because we know that, like, I think it's in the UK, the stats, something like that, only 18% of people who are diagnosed as neurodivergent are in full-time employment. And one of the big things, you know this, that they can't get through the hiring process. They're not good at maybe the face-to-face or the interviews or whatever. So how do you tackle this? As one example of how you look at things differently, how do you tackle your neurodivergent hiring processes?
It's a very good question, and it is actually something that we care a lot about, is the accessibility of our technology, and therefore the accessibility of our clients' jobs to people who are differently abled. And we kind of look at it in two ways. One is about the diversity of reach. So are you reaching people from diverse backgrounds or who are differently abled? And how is your messaging as a company around that? Are the ads you're running relatable to people of color, or to people from the LGBT community, or people who have disabilities, whatever it may be? The second part of that is then what is their experience of applying for a job? And we have a tool, in fact, on all of our careers hubs, kind of our careers pages and application processes, working with a company called Accessibility, which brings them all up to the highest standards of web accessibility. It allows a user to completely customize their experience by clicking on a little widget. You can then select, if you have ADHD, for example, it'll bring up a focus bar, stop all movements. If you are at risk of seizures, you can create a seizure-safe experience, which dulls all the colors down. If you are hard of hearing, you can dial that up and it'll read out to you, or it'll make it much more accessible to digest the content, and that goes all the way through the application process. And I think, it's no longer a nice to have, like this is 2023, needs to be the baseline. So we bring that to the people we work with as well.
Brilliant. It's exactly the same as you were saying earlier, that do you need a CV to be a cleaner? Possibly not. So things that are, a reference, maybe, I don't know, in terms of, credit worthiness, not credit, but, as in, you're not going to rob the rooms or something. You don't have a criminal record, perhaps, but which is a terrible thing to say. But I'm just, you don't need a CV. So no, really interesting. Okay, that's really cool. And I like what you're doing. It's interesting that the clients that you have And you have presumably then you're traveling, you're playing on world domination.
World harmonization. Yes,
World harmonization.
we're
You want to
working.
teach the world to sing.
I would love that, and to dance together. We are building. Yeah, the challenges we're addressing are universal, and are even less kind of well addressed in some of the biggest markets in the world, particularly the US. What our technology and our platform is completely scalable. It wouldn't take very much for us to launch in any country. So where we are in terms of our kind of growth journey, obviously we raised a bit of money, building out our sales team, trying to consolidate our position in the UK, and then to start to grow with some of our big international clients. And then I think TBC, but we probably look to raise a kind of larger round of growth capital in order to scale up a lot more aggressively.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very interesting. I love the rethinking that you're doing in this industry and matching people to jobs and the experience. It's very, very interesting. So people want to find you. You've got a difficult name and a difficult company name. So it's Matt Delahaye, H-E-Y, and you're the CEO and co-founder of inploi, which is INPLOI. Very clever, but you have to look at it first to understand how to say it. So inploi.com.
.com.
Perfect.
And,
thank you very much for your time.
On LinkedIn as well, obviously. If
LinkedIn, yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for your time today, Matt. Much enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Gillian. Lovely conversation. Bye.